Hi, I'm Dr. Xeturah Woodley. I want to let you know a little bit about this video before you watch it. Now, I recorded this video as part of a webinar series that I was giving back in February of 2025. So if it appears like it's a bit of a seminar, it's because it was. Now, if you have any questions after you go through the video, please feel free to post those in the comments below. I'll still respond as quickly as I'm able. Listen, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you're able to identify something that can help you move past your writer's block. Have a great day, and here is the video. Good morning. How are you today? Are you doing okay? I know it took a few minutes for me to get started, but I appreciate your joining me today. I am going to go through and do the whole lecture that I have prepared today. It's all about breaking through in your writer's block. So today's session is being recorded, and I'm trying to send it out live, do the live recording, both on Zoom and on Ecamm Live. I will probably be doing a lot of editing of this session, because it took me a few minutes for me to get all of the technology talking to one another, right? And still the technology is messed up because I still am unable to hear you as a participant or hear anyone as a participant. So first of all, thanks so much for joining me today. Today's lesson is going to be all about breaking through writer's block. Now, writer's block is something that we all deal with, right? There's a time in which we're going through our writing journey and we feel like we're at a standstill, like all of a sudden we've stopped. Now, I don't know about you, but there have been times when I've sat in front of the computer and just stared at a blank screen. Like I'm looking at Microsoft Word, I'm wanting to write something, but I don't always have it flowing the way that it normally does. And so that's when I'm starting to talk about writer's block, that's what I'm talking about. Those times at which you just need a little push or oomph to get you back to writing. So I have 7 strategies that I'm going to talk with you about today that I think that you can use immediately to help you push past any kind of writer's block you're on. And I'll link this up in the ThriveCart course for everybody. You'll be able to see the replay. So you can go back and look at this anytime you're feeling like you're blocked from being able to write. All right, so let's start with strategy number 1. So the first strategy I like to hint, and I'm looking off to the left because my computer screen is over here on the left, and that's where I'm seeing the content. So strategy number 1 is to switch to paper. So sometimes we always think that what we have to do is we have to have a computer, and in order for us to write, we need to be in computer mode. But sometimes in order to get your writing done, all you need is a notebook, just a piece of paper. So in August when all the school supplies go on sale, I buy a bunch. Yeah, this notebook is looking a little raggedy, but it's okay. That's how you know it gets used. Sometimes what there is to do is just stop being on the computer for a little while and start writing on a pad of paper. Like notebook paper for me is one of the best ways for me to get unstuck when it comes to writing. Now, for those of you who know me, you know that in addition to using technology, I'm a technology professor, but in addition to using technology, I use paper for everything. I have a paper planner, a day timer that I use. I use Franklin Covey as my writing tool for taking notes, for planning out my schedule for the day, for my to-do list. I use paper whenever I get stuck on the computer and just need a little time, extra time for writing or to push past those writer's blocks. And one of the reasons that I think paper makes a difference for people is because we get so inundated with technology. And I don't care if it's your cell phone. We all have cell phones. We all have laptops and computers. And we get in this mode where we think everything needs to be technology driven. And because of that, it causes us a level of angst and anxiety when it comes time to write. we're used to writing with Microsoft Word, or we'll use whatever our Google Docs or whatever our writing application is. And we get so used to looking at that screen that sometimes it makes a difference for you to move from that medium to another. It's kind of like artists. Sometimes artists are used to drawing with colored pencils, and they'll switch over and use chalk, or they'll switch over and they'll paint, or they'll switch over to some other kind of medium to help them move past that artist block, right? The same is true when it comes to writing. In writing, you should have more than one option for how to write and where you'll write. And sometimes just switching that medium, or that way in which the technology you're using or the paper in which you're using to write, sometimes that makes a huge difference for your being able to move past that writer's block. So I always encourage people in August, I have so many notebooks and different kinds of notepads, not just spiral notebooks, but I have paper that goes into notebooks. I have some of those journals. I have a number of journals. I just have different paper avenues I can reach for whenever I really want to move past a block that I'm in for writing. So most of my writing is done on a computer. It's easier for me to do it that way. But some of my writing really happens in journals, especially if I'm doing a researcher journal for a research project, or I am writing in order to outline what my document is going to be about, or what my article is going to be about. When I wrote my book, a lot of that was handwritten notes that I would then transition over to Microsoft Word. And so just remember, what you have available to you when you hit those writer's blocks is you can always switch over to paper. And sometimes just switching that medium helps you be able to get back in the groove of writing. Okay? So that is strategy number 1, is switch to paper. Any questions about that? Okay, on to strategy number 2. Strategy number 2 is all about changing your environment. So here's what I mean by that. A lot of my work happens at my desk, right? I am doing most of my writing because that's where my technology is, that's where my computer is, that's where a lot of my writing tools and writing utensils are right at my desk. Sometimes if you find yourself hitting a block at your desk, it makes a difference to change your environment. So if you are working from home, maybe what you'll do is you'll switch rooms, right? Sometimes writing at the dining room table makes a huge difference for people. Writing in the kitchen, I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes writing at the table in your kitchen makes a difference because you're used to convening meetings in your family, or breaking bread there. Maybe you feel comfortable there. Maybe that gives you better access to coffee. And changing your writing environment sometimes removes the stress that you may face when you're in a writer's block at your work desk. Hold on just a second. Let me get some water. So sometimes it's about moving your physical writing environment and taking on writing at a different location, either at your office or in your home. When I'm at work, if I hit a writer's block, it makes a difference for me to have a conference room available. So if I have a major writing project due, and I get stopped for any reason, sometimes just getting away from my desk and heading over to the conference room and writing in the conference room, just changing the environment in which you're looking, changing the environment in which you're taking action makes a huge difference. Sometimes a change in your environment is just shifting where you're looking. So sometimes it's just turning something on your desk. One of the things that I have available to me whenever I'm working, I have multiple. I don't know what you call these stands. Let me see. I'll put a picture up of the stand. But I have these little portable desk stands. You know what? I can't show you because I'm using it right now. But it's a desk that you can slide in and out. Let's say you were writing in your bed. You can slide the tabletop stand in and out. And I use that to help me move from place to place. So I can actually reorient my computer and my desk simply by changing and adjusting the stand that my computer is on. So that shifts my environment, it shifts my orientation so that I'm not looking at the same wall or looking at the same window or looking in the same place. It kind of shifts my mindset. So think about changing your environment, either moving rooms where you're writing, places that you're writing, taking some time to go to a coffee shop if that helps. One of the things that I know me and my mom have done before is gone to the library and went to a conference room in the library, which are absolutely free. When I was working on my PhD, I used to leave my job and at the end of the day, leave the job environment and go to the library at the university and work in there in the evenings because it wasn't work. So I wasn't distracted to start working on work stuff. I could focus on writing because I was in an environment that had books surrounding me. The environment called forth reading and writing. And so the library then became a really good environment for me to do my writing in. So always keep in mind, where's the environment you're experiencing the writing block right now? And can you change that environment to help shift you back into writing mode? Any questions about environment number 2 or strategy number 2, environment? All right, let me move on to strategy number 3. Now, I'm somebody who does not write without an outline. So everything I write, I include an outline. For this presentation today, I had an outline. For my book, I have an outline. I had an outline to write. For each journal article that I've published, I had an outline. For my dissertation, I have an outline, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten the dissertation outlines and you're working on the dissertation, don't forget in the ThriveCart course, I've given you access to my dissertation outlines I use with qualitative research studies with those of my clients and students that are working on qualitative dissertations. Go ahead and go into ThriveCart and you can get a copy of that. But an outline is something I always work with when I'm writing anything. So having the outline makes a difference when you're in a writer's block because you can always go back and review the outline. So let's say that you've written this outline for a book chapter. And in the book chapter, you've outlined exactly the points that you're going to make in that chapter. Well, going back and reminding yourself in that outline, by reviewing the outline, you're going back and reminding yourself, hey, this is what I said I was going to write about. And at that moment, you can then decide, all right, do I want to continue in that part of the outline or should I be going to a different part of the outline and start writing on that different part? But the outline is a good way to remind yourself what you're committed to writing. And by reviewing the whole thing, it can actually get you back into a space of writing because it just reminds you of what you're committed to putting in that section, putting in that chapter, putting in the that part of the book, putting in that part of your journal article, putting in that part of your writing. All right, so reviewing your outline is a great way to get you out of a block and put you back into writing mode. So that's strategy number 3, review your outline. Any questions about strategy 3? Okie doke. Moving on to strategy number 4. Now, this may seem counterintuitive. I mean, it may not make sense, but just stick with me here. This strategy is that I want you to write the last sentence first. So if you get stuck and you are blocked from being able to write, a lot of people that happens at the beginning of a paragraph or the beginning of a page or the beginning of a chapter. That's where the block starts. With this strategy, what I want you to do is I want you to write the last sentence of the book, or I want you to write the last sentence of the paragraph, the last sentence of that page, the last sentence of that chapter. Now, here's why I'm saying write the last sentence, because I also believe in backwards design. Like, you look at the end of where you want to be and you design your writing from that point backwards. So let's say that I'm writing a chapter on a book chapter, and this book is about doing YouTube videos. All right, so I'm writing a chapter on YouTube videos, and I'm stuck at the beginning of the beginning of the chapter. What do I really want to write about when it comes to that? Well, at the end, I'm going to stop and say, all right, at the end, what do I want to end with? Well, I want to end by saying that if you implement all of these strategies, you should be able to shoot your first YouTube video. So I'll write that first. I'll write that. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of that whole section for me. That if they use all of these strategies, then they'll be able to shoot the YouTube video. So then what I've given myself is an opportunity to then backwards design, well, what are the strategies they'd have to do? What are the tools they'd have to use to get to the point where they can say that, yep, if I implement these strategies and I use these tools, I should be able to make a video. So what I've given myself is instruction. I've written a sentence that gives myself some instruction on what should be included in that chapter. Sorry for all the thumbs up. I don't know how to turn that off on YouTube. On Zoom. Like all these thumbs and balloons and stuff are coming up. At least I can see them. You may not be able to see them. You don't see them? Okay, good. So what you've been able to do then is, by writing that last sentence, you've given yourself some insight on possible content you can include in the chapter earlier, right? So if I'm saying my last sentence is that by the end of this, by implementing those strategies, using those tools, you should be able to put in a YouTube video, then what I've done is given myself content I can actually write in the chapter. And then all there is for me to do is go back and add that content to the chapter. Really great way to break through, to have a breakthrough in those writer's blocks, is to write the last sentence first. Write the last sentence and then use that to guide you in the content that you want to write where you're experiencing the block. Any questions about strategy number 4? Write the last sentence first. No? Okay. Okay, that is strategy number 4. Now, strategy number 5, this has to be one of my favorite strategies that I use. And that strategy is to do a brain dump. So sometimes you're experiencing a block because you got too much stuff going on in your mind. Like there's just way too much stuff you're thinking about. You're thinking about your dog needs to be fed, or your cat needs to be let out, or sometimes you're thinking about all the bills that you still need to pay, or you're thinking about, what am I going to do if I can't get this done, right? So there are all these things that are going on in your mind that prevent you from being able to write. And so one of the things I'm going to recommend you do is do a brain dump. Now, here's what the brain dump could look like. One of the things that I like to do is I like to have a timer, and I can either have the timer on my cell phone, for example. I use my cell phone timer. I also have an egg timer that I use to set aside 5 minutes. Now, at the beginning of my writing groups, I like to start with a 5-minute brain dump, where I tell everyone that starts at the beginning of the writing session, what we're going to do is we're going to do 5 minutes, and all I want you to do is free write. I want you to write everything that's in your head. I want you to write it down. The objective here is to clear your mind so you can focus on writing. Because sometimes the writer's block is just that you have too much going on in your head, that it's blocking you and preventing you from writing, being specific, on task, and focused with your writing. So you take this 5 minutes and you just dump everything that's on your mind. Just let it all out. You'll use your computer to type it, or like I said, paper. Paper really works. You use paper to write down everything that you're thinking. But the objective really is to just get everything out of your mind so it frees you up to be able to write. So you set your timer for 5 minutes and you start the timer and you just empty everything out of your head. You write down those emails that you still need to send. You write down those phone calls that you need to make. You write down the bill that keeps popping in your head so that you don't forget about it. You write down all the conversations you need to have. You write down the laundry you need to do. You write down your car. You have to go and get your emissions checked. That's one of the things I'll be writing down today. You need to go get your emissions checked on your car. You write down anything that deals with work, anything that deals with family, anything that deals with life, anything that's in your head, you just get it all out. Just write it all down. And you keep writing until your timer sounds. And as soon as your timer sounds, you stop, you look over your list, and you make a decision at that point. Is everything out of my head enough for me to start writing, or do I need 5 more minutes to brain dump? And if you need 5 more minutes, you take 5 more minutes. It's more important for you to free yourself up to be in an environment of writing than it is to stick to some time schedule you have, or to continue to make yourself wrong because you're not writing. So it's better for you to just take the time. If you need 5 more minutes, set the timer again and dump again for another 5 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, you stop and say, okay, that's all the brain dumping I need. Now I can write. And then you start writing again. Now, I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro method. Pomodoro method is that you work for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break and then you start in for another 25-minute session and then another 5-minute break. And you do 3 rounds of Pomodoro and then you stop and take a 15-minute break instead of a 5-minute break, right? So that helps to be able to write, to get your writing done. But it also gives you a break in the writing cycle where you're breaking up all these marathon writing cycles, which can lead to the implementation of different forms of frustration, different forms of writer block, and anxiety. The objective is take the time that you need, but also take a break. So brain dumping is a really good way, especially if you're using a Pomodoro method. Brain dumping is a really good way for you to brain dump and then get back to writing. Brain dump and then get back to writing. Any questions about strategy number 5? Okay, good. On to strategies number 6. Now, this might, again, seem silly to you, but it actually works. It's worked for me. It's worked for my students. It's worked for my clients. Strategy 6 is write about something else. So let's say that I'm writing, I'll go back to my book on YouTube and how to make YouTube videos. That's the book, let's say, that I'm writing. Well, if I find myself blocked for a while from being able to write about that, that's okay. How about writing about something else? How about just going and writing a letter to a friend? How about going and writing a to-do list of all the stuff you put down on your, as you were doing your brain dump? How about going and, if you're writing a book, how about writing a blog post instead, right? And write a blog post about something else. Sometimes if you write about something completely different, it will remove some of that anxiety that you're feeling from the writer's block and give you an opportunity to get clear of that long enough for you to be able to then get back to writing. So writing about something completely different, something completely and totally different, write about something else, sometimes that helps as a strategy to be able to free you up from the anxiety that you're under when you're in those spaces of I can't write, or, oh, I can't believe I don't have this done, or why isn't it coming out? Sometimes if you go and write about something completely different, it removes some of that burden, and then you're able to get back to writing on your primary objective. So write about something else for a little while. Try that. The other thing in this strategy, I'll say, for those of you that are working on your dissertations, if you are writing on chapter 2, which is usually the longest chapter and the hardest to write because it's just boring, right? It's just all you're doing is a literature review. And so writing the same thing over and over, writing in the same format over and over, that's a lot of chapter 2. And people get blocks in chapter 2 because they're overwhelmed with the amount of literature that they're reviewing in order to include. Well, sometimes, let's say you're writing on chapter 2, if you shift your mode for a little while and start writing on chapter 3 instead, or write on chapter 1, or if you're in data collection, start writing up some of your data collection. Sometimes it's just shifting where you're writing and what you're writing about that can make a difference for you to be able to go back and add meaningful content. So if you're on your dissertation, for example, and let's say that you're getting to a point where you feel like you can't write anymore, or you're blocked from writing in, let's say, chapter 5, go back to chapter 2. Review chapter 2 and add content to chapter 2. Let's say you're blocked in chapter 2, which is a literature review. Go back and add a little bit to your findings chapter in chapter 5. Sometimes shifting chapters and writing on something else can make a difference for that writer's block. All right. So strategy number 6, write about something else. Any questions about writing about something else? Okay. On to strategy number 7, and this will be the final strategy for this webinar. Strategy number 7 is read an article or a book. I'll say that again. Alarms going off here at Casa Woodley. Strategy number 7 is read an article or a book. Now, for those of you writing a dissertation, let's say that you're at a writer's block in your dissertation, going back and reading one of the books that you refer to in chapter 2 is good. But when I say read an article or book, I'm more like go and start reading for pleasure, not always for work, right? And so go and read a comic book. Like I like reading a digital comic; those are good. Read a novel, right? Go and visit with a novel. Go and read something that gives you a little bit of mental play. If you're working on something that's really about work-related article or a book, right? Sometimes getting that mental ease makes a huge difference in order to move you out of writer's block. Now, sometimes though, reading an article or a book on the exact same subject matter that has already been written, already been published, sometimes that helps motivate you. It can also give you insight into maybe an area that you hadn't thought about for the section you're writing on. So yes, absolutely. If it looks like it'll make a difference for you moving out of the writer's block, read a book or an article that can help contribute to your journal article, or that can help contribute to your book, or that's on this exact same subject matter, because that can give you some inspiration, some insight, and some ideas even for your article or book that you're working on. But sometimes just taking a mental break can make a huge difference. It can make a huge difference. All right. Any questions about strategy number 7? All right. So that is it for today's lecture. I appreciate your coming out and taking some time to be in the lecture with me today. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to stop sharing now so we can end here.